sir.
Before you say goodbye, do you guys have questions on the legal, on buying, on selling? On things that you run into? Grant's got a million stories that are fantastic. I do want you, if you didn't already, to talk about kind of some pitfalls, if you could, like tricks you've seen people play, things, mistakes that people make that they kind of step into that they don't realize they're stepping into, if you could think of anything after you answer Brian's question.
Yeah, so when you're going through the due diligence process and you find material issues that like would necessitate a major decrease in the price, right? Like do you have strategies around those conversations or managing?
Right. Well, obviously, this is exactly why you should groom your company for sale, because we want to find this out between ourselves, right? Just us girls, and fix it before the buyers get there. But when it does, and guys, I didn't mean to be sexist, and all gender choices too. But then let's say it comes up. We've had it pop up in the middle of the deal. I was given the example before where the guy, we're selling a software company. It turned out he didn't have the assignments from all the programmers that he needed, and that's a huge deal to a buyer, especially the funds, because everything has to be perfect for those guys to do it. They just don't mess with stuff that's not perfect. And so my real strategy is prepare for that. That's really the best answer. But none of that, it's a case-by-case answer. In preparing, I talk about the management meetings. We practice those management meetings before they show up, because I've been in the meeting before where we've got buyers show up, because I'm the buyer, and they haven't practiced, and they're arguing with each other. Or they say something that they shouldn't say. Or they don't know the one guy, this buyer, he loves Donald Trump, or this one hates Donald Trump. I don't care who you love and hate, but we should know that coming in, because we're not here to offend anyone. We just want to get our company sold, right? So, yes, sir.
I was actually more curious when you're the buyer and you're the one coming in and saying, all right, I was going to give you $9 million, but now I can give you $6 million.
Well, and so that's the old takeaway. That's one of the great, everybody knows what the takeaway is, right? When we come and say, how am I going to recommend this to my client and my board if you don't even own your stuff? At most what I think I could do now, instead of buying this from you, is maybe we'll license it for a few years and make sure that there's no claims. Let the statute of limitations run, and then if it's still valuable, then we can renegotiate a price. I just turned the buy into to a license agreement, but we get all the stuff. So that's some of the bare knuckle stuff that goes on, but truly my boards won't buy stuff if you don't own what you have, if you don't own the company, or if you don't have controlling interest in the company, that sort of thing. If there's any.
You remember too, I think I told you guys the story about the motorcycle helmets company where there was a sale of the helmets company, and then they had a license deal with the IP, and then they came back when a bigger company came on to buy that, and they actually got a second bite at the apple, and that's happened a few times. That's the problem, is that sometimes they insist, even though there's licenses that are valid, they want to own the whole thing. And one of our first big contingency paydays as partners was a case where our client had designed the logo for a major sporting goods company, and there was a license deal with that, and the company got sold to a significantly larger company, and that company said, we need to own the whole thing. And this company came in, again, shockingly like bullies. They came in, we had a meeting with them, and then they served our client in the elevator on the way down from the meeting with a lawsuit to invalidate that license, but it was legit. It was that way, and it ended up settling for a whole bunch of money, coincidentally the day after Customs was about to seize all of the logoed items that were being imported from China. So that was just a coincidence. I don't know how that happened. But that's really important. All of those deals were at a standstill because they didn't own the rights. Did you talk about the invention assignment agreements? Yep.
I didn't. I'll do that real quickly. It kind of touches on that software example I gave. One of the things we do when we groom a company for sales, we make sure you own your IP. In California and in all the states that I'm aware of here in the United States, if you're an employee, anything you create automatically becomes your employer's intellectual property, as long as it's within the same scope of what their business is, right? So if you're building bank software and you come up with a great algorithm for bank software, that's going to be your boss's. That's not good enough for me. Okay? I want an assignment from anybody who's ever touched that stuff, and I want a proactive assignment that says, in addition to what the law says, that I'm going to own my company, or my client, whoever it may be, is going to own that. So there's invention assignment agreements, and in part of every deal that has anything technology or intellectual property involved, every M&A lawyer who's worth their salt makes sure that the sellers get from anybody who's touched the IP or the software, and all relevant employees invention assignment agreements. It's one of the things.
Value for that?
Pardon?
Will they want to exchange a value for that?
Well, usually they like to keep their job. You know, if I go to my employees and say, look, the lawyers, we're grooming this company for sale. You may when you're having your employees do invention assignment agreements, usually it's out that you're in a due diligence process and there's a sale there. And you're going to know who the employees are that you're going to want to retain and the ones you're not. And especially the ones who want to be retained or have any hope of being retained. I've never had any resistance from an employee saying, no, I won't do it. And then, you know, say, well, why not? Well, because I think I own part of that code. You want to have that conversation with them. Again, I want to do that before even the buyer's there, right? So we'll do all that before the buyers even show up, before you're for sale, so we don't have a hiccup in the middle, because that's the hiccup like you're talking about. Oh, sorry, we got you into this LOI and all this process. We're having trouble with getting clear ownership. I mean, there's the poop in the deal, right? Just that little speck, and they're out. So remember, we should just get a no poop shirt for you guys, because that's really, I mean, you keep it clean. Keep your deals clean.
We were looking at a company that makes a health and wellness product, a CBD product, and the formulation was done, you know, by a consultant.
Right.
That they still retain. So if we were to, let's say that we bought this, we wanted to buy this company, what happens when it was developed by a consultant? The formulation was done by a consultant.
Sure.
It's the same kind of thing. You need
Sure.
what did you call it?
Invention assignment agreement? Yeah.
You need that same kind of thing?
You'd want to get that from the consultant. Now, I'm familiar with that space. I've done a bunch of sales in that space. Some of those formulations aren't protectable, just so you know, and they're commonly known. How you make it, and so you just got to have a better twist on it, or nicer packaging, or better pricing, or whatever it may be. So first, determine whether it's
So there's nothing really to own, you're saying?
There may or may not be. The formulation is a trade secret driven business. Those formulators are good ones. Are artists. Good luck, and they'll say, good luck trying to do it. Somebody else. It takes another artist to really do it. So you do want to protect your trade secrets and keep right, that gives you the competitive advantage and it gives you perceived value as best you can. So those assignments would be important if there's any trade secret at all involved. I've just found a lot of formulations aren't many of the company.
Everybody calls themselves a formulator.
Yeah, but there's some good ones out there. There's some real craftsmen. I mean, those pills blow up, or they're not consistent, or they don't release right, or all. There's just all. It's really a science and an art. So, any other? Yes, sir.
I was going to say, I mean, it's for software, but we had a developer that was a contractor that did some stuff for us, and we paid him to do it for us, but we didn't have an invention assignment agreement. And after a lot of legal bills, even though it was the most BS litigation I've ever been a part of, but we ended up having to pay him an annual licensing fee for the software that he wrote, that we commissioned him to write.
Yeah.
Even though we...
That's like our logo guys, same thing. They're like, we paid you.
It was a rookie.
It is, and people don't understand. People just assume, like, they do wedding photos is a silly one. They don't know that they'll take your wedding photos and they'll give you a few copies of them. But if you want the negatives or the originals, there's a whole nother price, because that's their property. Wait, but I hired you to come take pictures, and I did. And here's a couple copies, right? Oh, but I want to post it online. And well, that's another $100 a photo. But I'm going to own those photos no matter what. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about after the deal is done? I mean, I did a deal 6 years ago, and we had office leases tied up in this and escrows for that, and
right.
Am I really? Well, the day I get the money, I'm good, but then there's all this crap that's happened for years after that. Setting some money aside for this, money aside for that, coming back with claims.
Right.
They didn't know something that was material 2 years ago, but after we got the money, and is that common, or did they just have a bad experience?
So he's asking about post-closing claims by a buyer. So the buyer comes along, buys, gives you a bunch of money, and then later they're coming back after you again.
Even after the escrow is kind of...
Right, even after the escrow is closed. So typically, if I do the deal for you and we're selling, typically what we're going to look for in agreement is some amount of money down, some amount of period, usually a year or two, where we'll have reps and warranties that will last. And after that period runs, you bought it and it's yours. You can't come 3 and 4 and 5 years later. So we'll time it out. Usually there's an escrow, 10% is pretty common, for potential claims. And then there's things that we call claim baskets, where we'll create really, if you will, a certain amount of money that we set aside to deal with certain potential claims. What we try to do on the sell side is make it so they can't come after. We say, look, do all the diligence you want. I'll even put a little money aside in an escrow. But beyond that, you can't get we don't want to hear from you again, because you don't control the company anymore. You don't control the records. You don't recall, you don't know if the problem's as bad as they say it is. So you really there's a couple reps and warranties though that lasts almost forever. And those are things like, did you really own the stock that you just sold me? It turns out you didn't. If they find out that's a fraud even years down the road, that can be a problem. So that's a really common. Yes, sir.
So when you're looking to sell, we talked about, from the buying perspective, like, you don't want to go to brokers or do that type of stuff that we talked about. Is there the same type of thing on the selling end? Like, how do you kind of initiate that?
I just didn't ask the question again. If
I
you
want to sell a company.
Yes.
Where does the process begin for, like, how do you start, is it okay to use brokers in that scenario, or what's like the best way to find a buyer?
Sure.
It's find a buyer. Yeah, find a buyer.
How to find the buyer.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember, no matter, before I even go out looking for the buyer, I just want to say it again, groom your company for sale. Make sure there's no poop, right? And everything's in order, right? Make sure that you're really there and that you're really ready for someone to show up, because the process, the minute the word gets out in the street, sometimes the process can go really fast. I've done big deals in 3 weeks before. And I almost had people quit on me, but we were working day and night. So this thing can take off really quickly, and you don't want to be tripping in your own way. Now, having said that, what we do first for a company, whether it's us or the brokers, we create what's called a teaser. Anybody ever seen a teaser? It's almost like a one-page sheet of like, on sale now, good looking, smart, entertaining, bald, but still, and, come date me, come see me, and then somebody they'll have some interest, then we'll have them sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we'll send them some top-end financials. Not all the granular stuff, but something that we have all this ready, it's all prepared, and a deck sheet about the company. And then if they have what we call interest and expression of interest, then we have the meetings or the phone calls. It's the flirting stage I talked about, and you move to the LOI. Now, how do you find those people? There's 2 ways to do it, because there's usually 2 buyers. It's either a fund or it's someone who's what we call a strategical buyer. Okay, someone who's in your space, right? You make cars and you might want to buy the tire company because they're in your vertical, or that you might want to buy the seat making company, or you might want to buy another car maker. So you have that. So they're in your space. In those cases, they may or may not need management, and you're going to typically know who the people in your space are. In that, you don't really need a broker if you know the guy down the street wants to buy you already, or might want to buy you, right? You might just need to get a lawyer to help you put together the teaser, make sure the company's ready, then you go out and talk to your people. Beyond that, if you are going to go out and look for the funds, they'll find that 10% of brokers that are out there that are good. They have the right Rolodex. Oh, you sell nutraceuticals, great. Find somebody who's in that space, the nutraceutical space, and knows how to go to the funds with them. Many brokers try to sell in every space, but a lot of the really good ones will just be selling. These guys are good in the software space. These guys are good in manufacturing. These guys are good in a different space. So I'd say brokers and your own common sense are the 2 best ways to find, that I've seen to find buyers. It's, nowadays too with the internet, you could almost do an email blast to all the funds that might be out there and all the potential buyers. The problem is they don't know who you are. And so there is some cachet to be coming from a top-notch accounting, legal, or brokerage firm when you are out there doing that. Yes, sir.
Is there a certain dollar limit where, like, above you would say, okay, maybe a broker isn't the best person to go to, maybe like sort of like an investment bank?
Well, so you just need to find a way to. But how does that investment bank find you? If your company's that big, where it's hundreds of $100 million up sale, people usually already know who you are. If they're
Even 10. I mean, we have people reach out to us, probably three private equity companies or strategic buyers a week for digital marketer. It's so, and if you're on the Inc. list, then that if you want the buyers to come to you, get your company on the Inc. 5000 list, and they'll be all over. That's like the private equity strategic buyer source document.
It's true, and I'll just to repeat to you guys, they're dying out there. We get calls all. There are not enough good companies for sale. There's so much money sitting on the sidelines right now. Where you got a statistic is like $3 trillion or something.
$3 trillion and
dry powder, yeah.
just sitting there. And, it's not earning any money, and just inflation alone is eating it up, right? So,
Plus, remember, they've got timelines on those.
Funds, that's, it's like 7 years. They get in that fund a few years, and a lot of those funds have covenants that say, because they have to liquidate at the end of the term, they say you can't buy a company after the first 3 years. So they're on like a clock of buying, a clock of fixing, and a clock of selling on those funds, which is kind of fun for us.
They have the 10 too, right?
Yeah, there's seven, and yeah, exactly. Yeah.
anything else at all? Well, thank you very, very much. I always love doing, especially these small ones. It's really great. Thank you, guys.